Andy and Reed head down south to Baton Rouge with Eclipse for a little father bonding. Let's break into a federal building time. While Caitlin and Polaris butt heads over how to train the mutants. And of course, Thunderbird and Dreamer dealing with the obvious and expected fallback from deceiving Blink, who just wasn't really too happy about all that. Bit of a mixed bag this week, but hey, still better than Inhumans. It's The Gifted, Season 1, Episode 6. Got your six. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of The Gifted. So yes, of course, as usual, spoilers, they're a-coming. Alright, quite a day today, not just with the episode, but some other Fox movie-related stuff, which I'll touch on at the end of this review. But let's dive into The Gifted this week. Like I was saying, a little bit of a mixed bag. Overall, enjoyed the episode. Definitely some good points. But there is some kind of repetition, annoying things that are sort of getting to me. And really kind of has to do with the parents. Parents are getting a little bit on my nerves. I mean, okay, let's start things off. Let's start with Caitlin here, who kind of has a moment at the beginning when she is watching the whole water thing over the vase going on, at a sort of wonderment of these mutant abilities which she is now in the midst of. And this kind of step moment where you can actually kind of take a step back from some of the earlier drama and quick go action and start to appreciate the kind of majesty and just incredibleness that mutant powers allow, I thought was great. And that lasted for about 3 or 4 seconds until, of course, we had the more battle destructive, destroy the vase, and we start to get the idea of Polaris training the mutants. Ever notice how destructive all these mutants are? I mean, destroying the vase, later on, Thunderbolt punches the door and puts a big fist mark in it, and we just, I appreciate learning the powers, but maybe just not quite so destructive about it. Anyway, but that kind of leads to the conflict of training styles. And I do appreciate where Polaris is coming from, because she is right. She's brought this up with Caitlin before, and she sort of reiterates today, is these kids will always be hunted. It's best to learn to use their powers as quickly as they can and as effectively as they can. Totally get that, especially when you are in a mutant, underground, flea recovery refugee center. Totally makes sense. Now, perhaps Polaris is a bit ambitious about it. For first, even if you are playing hard and playing truthful and all of that, maybe throwing hammers and saw blades at people for their first training session might be a little much. I mean, books, pieces of wood, things like that, not necessarily things that will harm, potentially kill, especially since they only seem to have the one medic with Caitlin. So I kind of get maybe the reaction against that particular training style. But what it comes down, but Caitlin's whole reaction to, I want to protect my kids, I want to get back to a normal life, that at this stage in the series, this many episodes in, seems overly cheesy, seems overly formulaic. It's let's create this overly protective mom thing. I love Amy Acker, but Caitlin as a character is really starting to annoy me. Both she and Reed are, and for a lot of these same reasons. It's the stupid parents things. We're overly protective. We don't understand the world that we're in. That she should think that there is any possibility of going back to a normal life is naive. And if she was just a simple regular parent, that might be one thing. But considering Reed's whole job was persecuting mutants, that fantasy idea that she hasn't quite grasped onto this far into the series, it's too much. If this was a 22 episode series, we're going through May, and this was just the first quarter of it, I could get that. It's 10 episodes. We're more than halfway through. This is episode 6. There's 4 episodes left. She should be a little bit more accepting, especially since after last episode, or the breakout episode, she let the kids go and do their thing. and contribute, and now she's pulling back and being overprotective. And yet, at the end of this episode, so that it's convenient and she has this whole letting go thing, she allows Lauren to go and do the whole attack. So I'm not really buying Caitlin's thing, and honestly, she's really annoying, this overly protective, I don't really get the reality of the situation. You damn well should. And right now you just sort of seem like filler emotional character. Now, Reed, of course, doing a lot of the same things with Andy. And there were some good and bad points, again, mixed bag, in with their whole little trip, too. The fact that he is starting to reach out and connect with Andy, I totally understand. Why, in the midst of that first real conversation, as soon as Andy is talking about, no, it doesn't hurt, it actually kind of feels good, and you could think of sort of some pent-up energies as being able to release that, might have sort of an expungy, release good feeling. Something that is held up inside you that you're actually able to reach out and do. You could sort of get that, like an athlete sort of needs to run. An artist needs to create. For a mutant, using those powers is part of who they are. So releasing and using it, I could see that to be sort of a good feeling. But simply because his power is destructive, we have Reed now jumping back into that same parental, oh my God, but you got to think right, and I want you to aim for it, and again, not supportive. I liked Marcos coming up and kind of interrupting there, noticing that conversation and saying, hey, let's sort of nix this before it gets too carried away. And I really did like their conversation afterwards in dealing with the whole idea of parenthood and what's it like to be a parent, and did you plan on it, and the fact that Reed's admitting, I still have no idea what I'm doing, and Marco's saying, I know you don't, but you got to keep trying, at least you're trying to connect, and that's good, and you got to reach out. I like that. But making Reed kind of stupid and that kind of just tropic parent reaction, whenever you have a parent dealing with a kid or something they don't like, it ends up being fighting and argumentative. It would be more interesting to have one of them at least understand what's going on and be a little bit more supportive. But as both parents, where they're coming from, it seems kind of like too much. The police pull over the first one when they're in the back of the truck. Okay, look, you are transporting mutants, obviously across state lines over a large distance. You've got them stashed up in the back of a truck in order to hide them out. If that was the case, wouldn't you at least put some tarps up? A row of two of fake boxes, something so when you open it up, you don't just see the pee bucket and the bench and the sleeping bag. It looked like there was a couple more things, but still not all that much. It seemed like just a poor preparations right there. And why would the trucker then lie about where they were going if they had an idea that they could possibly trace the truck, which they had no problem grasping on later on? Anyway, it seemed a poor thing. I mean, what it did is it seemed like an excuse in order to show this new aspect of Eclipse's powers, which was kind of cool, that he could absorb light before he puts it out, so he's not just generating the lasers, but he can sort of create darkness around him. That's kind of a cool idea. I thought this was a weak excuse to show this. I mean, unless it's a bit of foreshadowing. I mean, what I thought is this might be foreshadowing of something they're going to have to do when they're in the federal building, which didn't end up being the case. And that went a lot smoother than it seemed like it would. So it seems sort of weak between not having any box or breakups or anything to kind of, again, this would be a great time for Wes to be there in the back with them with his illusion powers. Just open it up. There's nothing there. Okay, great. Or there's a bunch of boxes or, whatever, crates of animals, whatever it is that they wanted to have in there. That would be a super cool use. I like Wes in his new introduction. But not even having a line of boxes or tarps or anything to sort of protect that just seemed kind of dumb. Why lie about where you were going? Silly. The break-in down in Baton Rouge was cool, was quick. Appreciate they didn't drag it out too long. Why they all split up, I mean, I get, again, the dad protectiveness of Andy. Andy could do it and get in there. The question is, what if they got trapped and needed a second exit? Andy might have been useful. Also, considering to set off all of the car alarms, having Andy run out of there by himself while Eclipse and Reed went inside the Federal building, it didn't really seem like smart decision making. You are safer together than separated, is all I'm saying. Obviously, something with the picture. We had Reed and two other people, two girls, African-American girl, white girl, and a judge, looked like a judge, Asian guy, wondering if that is back to the Honorable Kursiski, sorry I'm forgetting the name, that we saw in Dreamer's vision when she was going after Jace's memories last week. So that could possibly refer to that. And then finally, the whole truck thing back. Okay, I like the fact that they caught that they were being tailed. I like the idea that Reed was able to go in and use his cop knowledge to look that maybe they don't have an obvious alert, but it's some sort of sneaky alert, avoid this highway type of thing. I thought that was all kind of cool. It seemed at the very least that they were close back to Mutant HQ in order to have Lauren and Wes and Polaris go and make that interception at the point that they were going to. That was kind of convenient. What really got me though, and I know it's done completely out of budgetary reasons, but they're coming back, we're assuming on a main highway, seemed to be blocked off, there was no other way out, so we've got this long column of cars, and yet, when they get to the roadblock, why is it in the middle of a suburban neighborhood? Just a regular picket, house with the white picket fence streets. No big backup of cars. Seems just the only truck is the only one there. Everything is gone. So that, really, that yanks it out. I know they do it for budget. They probably couldn't break down a whole highway and be able to use that and all the cars and backup. Sure, I get it. But they created this situation like this is the only place this truck could go. And yet, it seemed to be just some odd regular street that there would be no reason why a truck this big would ever be going down that street. I'm not even going to talk about the actual semi-jump. Come on. Come on. That was ridiculous. I like Wes's power, splitting the truck up and then making the actual truck invisible. That was smart. Again, that's what I'm saying was kind of a mixed bag this week. There was a lot of good stuff, but there was also a lot of very tropic, simple, again, low-hanging fruit kind of arguments and things and stupid parent stuff and a dumb truck and why? Justify these things properly or find a more interesting way to do it. This just starts to feel like cheap TV. And the whole Dreamer, Thunderbird, Blink thing, again, this is, kind of cheap TV. This is an expected conflict to happen. And none of them handled it well. Dreamer's obviously an ends justifies the means kind of girl. That's all of her focus is. John caught in a situation, he should have said something when he had a chance, because when she found out, there's not really anything he can say. The question when she asked him, when we were together at that moment, the look that you were giving me, was that any real? There's no good answer for him on that. None. If he says yes, then she might think that she's pandering to him. If she says no, then, well, he's lying. But it also makes him think that that he was just using her at that point, and that was one of his techniques. Saying it's complicated is probably the only answer that he could realistically have given in that situation. But it doesn't matter because, of course, that means Blink is gone because you have to pay the price for deceiving people, which isn't a good thing, and certainly not owning up to it when you should have, not after you're found out. It's not honorable. It's just making excuses. But she won't be gone long. She will come back, I am sure. And as for Jace, guess just by will and will alone, he will go back to work no matter what anybody says. So much for what suspension is. Obviously, this is him reconnecting with Roger Campbell, who is running the whole Hound unit, which is why they want info on the Strucker children, of stuff that they can use and things like that. So this all just kind of gets all of them involved. The big question that I have with that whole situation is this. If Roger Cramble has enough connections up high in order to get Jace reinstated despite being what I would assume to be some sort of medical leave, why was he unable to use those self-same connections just to get access to the files that he now has access to because he got Jace reinstated? If that seemed to be what he was going after. I mean, it works for him to have Jace as an ally, sure. But it just seemed a lot of like, if you have that many connections and power to get this guy his job back, couldn't you have just made him get you those files anyway? All right, just a couple of small things. One, the opening bit where we got our flashback with John as a vet trying to raise money for the whole 715 disaster and dealing with the early real big stages of violent reaction to him. Still being the hero, still saving people. But these are kind of the interesting points that I think X-Men really handles well. And they do it a few other times throughout the episode, dealing with the whole prejudice idea. Even the whole Polaris bit we were talking about before, of these kids are going to have to fight for the rest of their lives. They're always going to be chased. People are always going to hate them simply because of who they are. These are the ideas that I think X-Men and the Gifted do have the potential to really dive into. And they do it somewhat, but kind of not all the way. Because they sort of touch on it with the whole opening bit of, you know, I'm a mutant, yes, but I fought for this country. And they did that quick little bit, and then they kind of moved on. So it's one of those things that this show really could grapple really interestingly and really deeply. And I'm hoping that they do a little bit more. They have the potential for it. But right now, a lot of their stuff is still on the surface. Really, really is something that I think they would draw a lot of strength on, continue to hit and focus on. The Mutant Underground HQ does not feel like it's 78% over capacity with all of the mutants coming in. It never does. When we really don't get to see any, it doesn't ever really seem like there's anybody else out there. We never see the other mutant powers. You never see the like organized work gangs. Even that shot when we had John, you know, talking about, I thought we should think of defense. He's the only guy out there, John, the leader of the Mutant Underground here, chosen by the X-Men, which I didn't know. Interesting. A nice little background. And he's out there by himself lifting up the blocks and putting them away. I know not every mutant power is super awesome, powerful stuff, and the kids themselves, they're powerful, they're a strong sampling, good, but there never really seems to be anybody else in this place, any of the other refugees. It never really feels that overcrowded that they are supposed to be. It's one thing they hit on, but just sort of seems like some background thing for the characters to do. We carry this handful of shirts and blankets to the next room. They keep saying a war is coming. The X-Men said a war is coming. I wonder if that means they actually are using this, especially with Sentinel Services, as the precursor for the Days of Future Past whole war on mutants sequence. Sort of feels where they're going at. One of our viewers, Old Dude, and I were discussing in comments the apparent tossing out of rules or warrants or anything like that in the midst of cop shows. And we had a perfect example of this here, where we have Jace saying, all the phones, I don't need a warrant, get all of this. It's an unfortunate thing that we see in a lot of police dramas, is the idea that lawyers show guilt and warrants are unnecessary and we just have to go after the bad guys. It's not a good reflection of the justice system. And it was just, I really thought about that, Old Dude, when I saw that in this episode. So a little shout out about that. All right, and lastly, a little bit step away from the Gifted. Big news dropping today is that Fox has been in talks with Disney to buy their whole film studio package, everything. We're not just talking about Fantastic Four and X-Men, which are the main things that are important to us Marvelites, getting all together under one roof. But their actual whole film package, Searchlight Pictures, 20th Century Fox, television. I mean, it's not everything. There are certain issues with like Fox Sports and ESPN because you can't own two of those same things. And there's a lot of repercussions. It may not go quite as smoothly just because of antitrust, monopoly things, stuff like that. However, it would have a huge potential effect on film distribution and the whole film business. All of this is just further consolidation. There are less players, and those larger players can sort of squeeze and eke out any new up-and-comers. This could be potentially countered by new media, direct-to-video sales, internet connections, Netflix stuff, those types of venues. But that's the negative side. For the plus side, this could put the X-Men and the Avengers all together. And Hugh Jackman did say he would potentially come back as Wolverine one last time if it would be an Avengers film. So this is big. Also, while Fantastic Four is big, for Marvel, the real big draw for that would be Doctor Doom, one of the best villains in Marvel's whole pantheon. And they really need a new overarching villain now that they're ending the whole first three phases. Thanos Infinity Gauntlet thing would be a great villain for Phase 4 and beyond. So, a lot of potential there. Still don't know where it's going to go. My guess is, however things fall out, Disney will find some way to purchase those rights back, even if they buy a huge chunk of the studio and then pick out what they want and then sell the rest off even cheap. I think it would still work well for Disney. So, a lot of potential things. This would mean, of course, probably less movies coming out overall, since it would all be under one studio and they would pace things out. We wouldn't be getting all these X-Men and Marvel movies at the same time. But we would also have some of the problems that these other franchises have run into potentially fixed back under Marvel's aegis. So, very interesting stuff going forward. We'll keep an eye on how this all plays out. All right, so I think that pretty much covers everything. Like I said, good episode overall. Did have some issues. We do only have 4 episodes left, and I think part of the problem is there seems to be a little lack of direction. I mean, I guess the rest of this we're going after Hound, but I don't know, it seems a little lack of focus for being such a tight series of only 10 episodes. It doesn't feel like it has the same kind of clear vision of what it wants to be in the story it wants to tell. Some stuff it moves too quick on, and some stuff it doesn't really spend enough time on. So, I don't know. We're going to have to see how the rest of these play out. I am still hopeful, and like I said, it's still better than Inhumans, which is thankfully going to be over after this week. But that's going to wrap us up for here. If you did enjoy this review, please go ahead and hit that like button. You can share it over all of your social media platforms. Various share selections are available to you. Thoughts, ideas, comments, throw those down in the section below. What'd you think about the episode? Any particular botherments? Are you totally on board? Is it working for you? That's great to hear too. I really want to hear what you guys think and what's working for you. Throw those down in the section below. You can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Darren Jakes. Please subscribe if you are not. It's quick, it's easy. You hit one button, you catch this review, plus Walking Dead, Dirk Gently's Mr. Robot, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then next year, of course, we're going to have the return of Legion and American Gods. So a lot of stuff coming forward. You won't miss it if you're a subscriber. Do that by clicking right here, my face. And I'll go ahead and throw up our couple of latest reviews right here, and you can check those out. We'll do a classic and a brand new selections. All right, so that's going to be it for me. I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.